Welcome, everybody. I'm going to do a sound check. Paul, if you can just let me know that sound is coming through. Or everybody can. Excellent. Okay. My name is Anne Dupuy. I'm going to be doing a little bit of information about ResearchWare while we wait for additional people to come in. So my name is Anne Dupuy. I have been with ResearchWare since its founding in 1991, and I am happy to be your presenter today for mixed methods research in HyperRESEARCH. So while we wait for some more people to come on board, I want to talk to you a little bit about ResearchWare. Our company makes simple and powerful tools for qualitative and mixed methods research. We started out with our flagship product, HyperRESEARCH software, in the early 90s, and we added HyperTranscribe as a companion piece and a standalone piece for people who needed an easy way to do transcripts when they were collecting data for their qualitative research studies. We actually believe in ResearchWare that research should be easy and that you should be spending a lot more of your time on doing your research than on learning how to use the software that's supposed to be helping you. We also believe that people should be able to do their research the way they want to. So from fairly early on, we have been supporting both Macintosh and Windows operating systems, and we designed the software to be flexible as well as easy to use so that just about any research method for qualitative research could be used within HyperRESEARCH. And I'll be getting into how to do that a little bit later in the webinar. We also believe that it is our duty and our pleasure to help our customers every step of the way when they first have questions before they purchase. If they have any issues or need any help or would like some support through installation, through learning the software, and through and obviously any difficulties they may encounter with the software, whether that's through needing additional help with some of the more advanced features of the software or any other questions they may have. So with that out of the way, I'm going to continue the webinar itself. So again, this is Mixed Methods Research with HyperRESEARCH. I'm going to jump right into the meat of this with a demonstration. So I'm going to actually hide my PowerPoint, launch HyperRESEARCH, I'm going to create a new HyperRESEARCH study, which is currently untitled with no data in it. I'm going to go right to the Mixed Methods Importer tool. I'm going to select a data file. The data file I want is actually the superhero study. Here is the data file. It's loaded the data file. I am going to choose the superhero name as the unique identifying information that will become the case name. I may want to, actually I'm going to ignore the last name and the first name. That data will still be in the source files that the Mixed Methods importer will create automatically, but we don't need to filter on it. We're always interested in the superhero name. And then age is something we may want to be able to say whether we want to see this age or that age, gender, race, and universe. And then these three are the qualitative questions we have with qualitative data. We don't do anything with them here. They will be automatically coded with the question label for further qualitative coding and analysis in the study. And so I'm just going to leave the defaults here and click, click, click. I'm going to save it as superhero sample study. And in the superhero study folder, yes, this is what I'm doing. I'm telling it where to save the automatically constructed HyperRESEARCH study. And boom, we went from survey data to a full HyperRESEARCH study with 12 cases, one for each of the superheroes that were in the survey. And we have pre-coded the superhero name, the age, whether they're male or female, the race, the universe, etc. So this now means we can actually filter cases, for example, by criteria. So I want to look only at the female superheroes. And boom, we have Catwoman, Phoenix, Storm, Wonder Woman, and there you have it. Mixed Methods Importer creates a study for you from your data file in only a few minutes. And then what you can do is you can actually open additional source material for Wonder Woman and code it to the same case. And you can use the survey provided quantitative variable data to look at subsets of your data. You're going to get to see this again with an actual data set. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. Okay, so now back to the PowerPoint. And we are going to go on to everything that goes into getting it to do that, which is the process of research using HyperRESEARCH. And so this is a general thing about how you do research, both qualitative and mixed methods in there. And I'll get on to how you prepare the data for the mixed methods importer, etc. The first step, of course, is you need to have some data, and you should prepare it in a number of ways. You should have your source files organized, and I really recommend that you learn the filing systems of your operating system, whether that's Windows or Macintosh. Basically, you want to have your sources located on your hard drive or in the cloud with names and folders and some sort of organization so that you can quickly identify each of your source files, know where they are. You should optimize your source files. We have some information on this in our tutorials about how to make sure that text files are readable and that they're, as in you have nice white space, you have headers and maybe bold and italic and stuff like that. And that all of the editing has been done to the text source files before you begin coding. Likewise with images, audio and video files. And you may want to create a code book and cases so that you have, so you're all ready and in preparation for actually opening the source files and applying codes. And then you also will be conducting analysis. This will be via coding. HyperRESEARCH offers an autocode capabilities. You may have annotations or memos that you want attached to specific codes. You may want to use filters, which allows you to analyze a subset of your data based on various criteria involving cases and codes and the intersection of them. And then your report findings. You can use the report builder. There's a frequency report. There's a word counter. and we're working on additional ones. Something to keep in mind is that these processes can be iterative. You can prepare and add source files at any time during the process of your research. Again, note that these should not be edited once you begin coding because of the way HyperRESEARCH keeps track of your source material. It does not actually load it into a database where you can then make changes to it and it will remember the changes. It provides links to subsets, sections of your material. And if the underlying content changes, the links will no longer point to the correct material. You can add, rename, and delete cases at any point. I'll get a little bit into what cases are and how to use them. Likewise with codes in your code book, likewise with annotations, and you can analyze all of your cases and codes or subsets of your tools with a subset of your data with any of the tools. You can use the theory builder to build theories and test them against your current coding, and more. So this is true for both the qualitative portion of your research and also the quantitative portion of your research that you choose to do within HyperRESEARCH, which can include frequency reports, word counters that shows the frequencies of words in your source materials, the theory builder, which can get into some real nitty-gritty Boolean expressions, looks at your data in a more quantitative way on top of all of the qualitative research you may be doing. And more in any order. So here's a little bit of information about how HyperRESEARCH is organized and how you can organize your data within HyperRESEARCH. You have the HyperRESEARCH application on your desktop, on your computer, in your program files in Windows, or in your applications files on Macintosh. And that HyperRESEARCH application you use to create a study file. Your source materials will also be on your hard drive or in Dropbox or on a server or otherwise accessible to you. And they should remain there and pretty much untouched. In other words, don't change any of them. As you do your research, you can of course add source files if you decide that certain source files aren't really needed in this particular version of your study. You can remove source files and the coding attached to them. So the HyperRESEARCH has a case and code model. I'm sure you're all familiar with coding for qualitative data, where you basically select some segment of material and you apply a label or a code to it. And then you can analyze the codes themselves and also retrieve the underlying coded data. But then HyperRESEARCH also has a case structure. And this is very important, especially the synergy you can get between the cases and the codes. So each case in your HyperRESEARCH study is basically a bucket for information you can put into it, and the bucket can represent anything. In the data files that we're using now with the mixed methods importer, the cases are actually predetermined by the data in your data file or your survey. Each case will actually contain the information from a row in your data set. So that is why we got a case named Catwoman, because there was a row of data for Catwoman in the survey, and so on. If you are doing qualitative research or are doing data sets that are not necessarily surveys, but you can use them to set up your HyperRESEARCH study with cases that represent whatever is in a row of your data. So this is how you can do text, images, videos, audio to any case. Any source file can be coded to one or more cases, and any case can have as many source files as you like coded to it. So here is how you need to optimize your data for HyperRESEARCH, specifically the survey and delimited data. There are specific file formats that we support, the mixed methods importer supports. They include excel.xlsx, tabbed files, whether that's in text format, DAT, TSV, etc., and custom delimited files, which is an advanced thing that if you have specific data files that have custom delimiters and whatnot, then you can contact us for help with creating that for setting the mixed methods importer up for the custom delimited files. Most people will be using surveys that have been exported in Excel format or as tabbed files or whatever, but we do offer options for more advanced surveys and data. So also, your mixed methods data file must have a first row containing headers or labels. This will become codes. One column with uniquely identifying contents, which will become cases. Other columns with quantitative or qualitative values. If they're quantitative, like age, gender, etc., you can use them to filter your data in HyperRESEARCH, your cases and your codes. And qualitative, you can have responses to open-ended questions. Your mixed methods data file must not have any rows above or below the data, header, footers, copyright notices, etc., that you don't wish to import, split or merged columns, rows, or cells, multiple sheets, and also there is a file size limit. In testing the mixed methods importer, I was doing silly things like importing purely quantitative data that had 500,000 records in it, and it took a little while, so we decided we should actually limit the file size to more reasonable file sizes. Oh, I didn't quite want to go to there yet. I'm going to actually open a file in Microsoft Excel, and here we have Microsoft Excel, and I am going to open, let's see, that's not what I want. I want to open a file. This is what your research should have. And I want to be using this study file. This is, I'm using a sample study from the Using Software in Qualitative Research book by Ann Lewins and Christina, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on her last name, which is available through Sage and has a great resource website which has information on how to do the exercises in their book in HyperRESEARCH. And one of the sample files that they've given us permission to use is a file from Ann Lewin's research. Let me go ahead and hide others for a bit. And this is an example of the type of data file you can have. You need the first row to be basically a header row, and this is what's going to create your codes. So you're going to get respondents codes and the values of those, and this is actually going to be created a case. We're going to use this as the case name, but then you're going to have code groups of employment status that are going to be automatically created that will have these values in it: retired, self-employed, etc., marital status, age group, and all of that. And then we have here the qualitative columns that we will not be either using as a case name or filtered, so it will be handled as qualitative data. And so the information here in the source files created automatically from each row of data will be coded with the question name to earmark it for future coding. But again, there's only one sheet, there's only one header, there are no split or merged codes, and there is discrete data in one column that we can use as case names. So we don't need Excel anymore. Go back to the PowerPoint. And on to the next slide. Keep in mind that the column you check as case name in the mixed methods importer setup will actually create case names and cases in your study. Each row will provide the information for a single case in your study. Each row also generates a text source file with data from that row. The columns you filter will become codes in the code book, and these will be organized by code group with the code name supplied by the column heading. Columns you ignore will not appear in the source files or cases, and all other columns, the qualitative data, are used as qualitative data in your HyperRESEARCH study. I want to mention that the columns you ignore, the data within them will still appear within the text source file created. It just won't be coded. And then code name is supplied by the column heading, and the contents of the field is selected and coded in a source file. Okay. So the process of going from data file to HyperRESEARCH study in minutes is optimize your mixed methods data files, open HyperRESEARCH new study, open the mixed, it is possible actually to open a current study and add cases and codes to it from the data file. But for starting your study, start with the data file and then add the qualitative stuff. You then open the mixed methods importer, select a data file, do the import setup, set up import options, and then you import. So I am actually going to demonstrate this again, but this time I am going to be using the other data set, the downturn survey data set, and I will be exploring a few of the options in the mixed methods importer. Let me hide the others again. And so we have here a new study, and again I'm going to do the mixed methods importer and select a data file. The downturn survey data file is the one that I had opened up in Excel previously, and it takes a few seconds more to load because it is a larger data file, and it has 14 columns in it, but it has I think about 190 respondents. So respondents is the unique identifying variable, so we are going to have that marked as the case name. HyperRESEARCH will actually be able to handle things like if you're using last name as the case name, it will be able to handle several respondents whose last names are Jones by applying an appendix to the name of a search. It applies a little bit of more information, such as a number 1, number 2, etc., to the case name if there are any repeats. So you don't have to make sure that every single cell in the respondents column has completely unique data. But in general, that's the one that is the one that you want to be able to, whatever the unique identifying data is. So we do want to filter on employment status. We do want to filter on whether they have family with children, marital status, age group, region, etc. Question 1, job security, actually is a quantitative thing, and question 2 is actually quantitative. They had that was, they could check off certain things. And then question 3, the question itself is quantitative. The comments is qualitative, so I don't mark them at all. Holidays, again, is quantitative. The comments are qualitative, so I don't mark them. And purchases was likewise a quantitative response, and then also comments. So now here we are into the import options. I can place the filterable codes in groups, or I can not do that, in which case all of the codes will just be in a single all codes list with no particular organization other than alphabetical in the code name. But I like the idea of having all of the questions, all of the age group codes that are created based on the age group variable values to be grouped under the age group code group, which you'll see when you see the code book after we import this. But I am actually going to create a broad code for each filterable code, and what that means is that this age group heading is going to be applied to the age group information, as well as the age group value that will be coded to it from the data cells values. So empty values, I'm actually going to replace, instead of not coding at all, I'm going to replace it with a not applicable or empty or no response. Let's do no response. And I am actually going to apply the codes to both the label and the value. And the value of doing this is you would then have age group colon and then the specified age group applied in the code, so that when you retrieve the age group codes, you have within the text the label that it is an age group. I don't need a case name prefix really, so I'm just going to leave that blank. And I am going to, again, save the imported data to a study and open it in place of the current study. The current study is an untitled, unused case, and so I'm just going to be replacing it. If I had another study, I could import it into the other study to merge with it, or I could go ahead and close whatever study it was and import this into a new one. So like with the superhero study, it asks me to choose where I'm putting it and choose a name. So I'm going to be putting it in my research files, in the downturn study materials, and in the same level that the downturn survey itself is in. And boom, there we have 191 cases. And they are pre-populated, the code book, with age groups, employment status, questions, etc. And if I go ahead and jump right here, we have question 3 with the comments about the fault or the blame that the respondents have about the downturn in the United Kingdom economy. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint to talk about what you do with adding qualitative data. So again, optimizing your data for HyperRESEARCH text and multimedia data. You can organize your source files, whether that's text, image, audio, etc. Check for file format compatibility. You can find what the file format information on our website and also in the built-in help with HyperRESEARCH, which is also available as a PDF user guide in the documentation. Check for readability, edit as necessary. You might need to adjust the images for best viewing on screen. I'll do all of that before you begin coding in HyperRESEARCH for each of the source files you do. So there are a couple of different ways you can add sources to your HyperRESEARCH study, especially the one that has just handily been pre-populated with survey data by the mixed methods importer. You can add single source files through the sources list feature, or you can add multiple source files from a folder, or you can open and code a source within the sources list feature. And then you can also add source files individually using the open text file command or open audio file command, etc. And then you begin coding, and the source file will be added to the study and associated with the current case when you apply the first code. So I'm going to demonstrate that, and I'm going to also show why it's important to make sure you are aware of what cases open. So I'm going to close the mixed methods importer. I don't have any more data to import. I'm going to, let me go ahead and hide PowerPoint. I'm going to actually go to the sources list, and I have all of these source files already in it. These are the ones that were created automatically by the mixed methods importer, and each of them represents, again, the data in a particular row. And then you can add new source files this way. So we have the case B docx files, and I'm going to actually open this one and go ahead and open the source file. And what I've just opened is a focus group transcript that involves these particular respondents. So I can do a number of things with this source file. I can actually create new cases and code all of this to a case named focus group 1. Or what I can do is I can take the individual respondents and code this information here in the focus group to the corresponding case in the downturn study. So I'm going to actually go to case, and I'm going to see if I can find, not all of these cases are actually, let's see, respondent 06, here we go. Select. It's not a one-to-one match between the way the respondent number was tracked in the focus group with the way it was tracked in the study in the data file, but respondent 6 is the same. So partly retired, FE lectured. So here we have part-time and female. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go down Sorry for the pauses. I'm actually going to go down here, and I am looking for everything. I grab the respondent 06 label that's being used, and I'm going to look for that here. And oh, apparently she didn't respond in here at all. Oh, my mistake. I should have gone through before. I'm going to go ahead with respondent 372 and go to case respondent 372. Here's respondent 372. We should be able to find that. There we go. So here I've just used the find command in the source file to find respondent 372, and I can then now grab this information. I don't actually need this at the moment. Grab this information. I don't actually have a what I want to do is I want to do a new code, because there's not really a new code. It seemed like a gravy train. And I'm going to go ahead and add it to my code book and apply the code. And here we are beginning to do additional qualitative coding for analysis, later analysis on the case that was created by the mixed methods importer. So that's the basics of how you then begin adding additional qualitative data to your mixed method study that you started with a data file with. So I'm going to go ahead and quit HyperRESEARCH for now and go ahead and save that and get back to the PowerPoint. So coding in HyperRESEARCH, I already showed you a little bit, but some things to keep in mind is codes in your code book are just labels you can apply to selections of source material. You can begin with a predetermined list of codes in addition to the ones that are done by the mixed methods importer, or you can develop emergent codes as you analyze your data, or you can do either or. And then you apply the codes to the source material to create a link between a specific segment of a source file and the current case. And I actually demonstrated that earlier. So filtering cases and codes. You can filter cases to look at a subset of your subjects, and filter codes to look at a subset of your coding. And the report builder will reflect the current filters and sorting of the case in the study. And please note, the synergy between your case and code filters is powerful. And I'm going to go demonstrate that. I'm going to use the superhero study. Let me just go ahead and hide the PowerPoint again. Oops, that's not the one I wanted to do. And here we have HyperRESEARCH, and I'm using the superhero data. Because it's a little simpler to deal with. You can see all of the codes here, so that it makes a better demo study than the quote real close quote data. So here we have Batman or Catwoman, etc. So I can very easily filter cases by name. Okay, let's just look at Batman and Superman, because everybody likes a good Batman-Superman head-to-head mashup. And then I can go to the report. So with Batman and Superman filtered, these are the only two that are here. And I'm actually going to go and go to the report builder, and this is information about what you can include, and I'm going to include coded source text. That will be all of the automatically coded stuff created by the mixed methods importer at this date. And I'm going to sort by code instead of by case name, because I want to see the results for both Batman and Superman on the same page. And I'm going to go ahead and display on a single page because there's not a lot of data here. If I displayed on multiple pages, each page would represent a code, such as superhero name, age 32, etc. But I'm going to display on a single page. Okay, so I display the report, and none of the cases actually include age 24 or age 26 or whatever. And this might point to us that maybe we have the ages a little too specific and we should have created age groups. But anyway, Batman is age 32 and Superman is age 35. So if we had actually coded an age group instead of single ages, we would be able to perhaps have age 31 to 35 would show that Batman and Superman are actually quite close to being the same age. They are both male. And here's a really big difference between Batman and Superman. Batman says, the question is, how did you get your superpowers? And Batman says, I don't have any superpowers. And Superman is, I was born with them, and goes on. So this is an example of how you can show a subset of information in your reports. So this is just showing Batman versus Superman. But there's a lot more you can do too. We're going to filter the codes by name, and we don't really want the age group. Oops, sorry. Filter codes by name. We don't want the age group. We do want the gender group, whether they're male or female. Sorry, I'm continuing to. So I select both gender male and gender female, and I especially want how did you get your powers, favorite, which bug. I especially want these. But then let's go for what the universe group is as well. So now you have a subset. You can tell at a glance that Batman is male and universe is DC, and then there are these 3 questions that have been coded, but have not been, they've just been labeled with question 1, question 2, question 3. So we might want to actually take a look at, well, okay, so here is information on Nemesis is the Joker. So I'm going to apply the code, and so now we know that Batman's Nemesis is specifically the Joker. And we can go to Superman 2 and go, which villain bugs you the most, and we can apply the Nemesis code to Superman, and then we have further qualitatively coded. So that's how you can do synergy with cases and codes as well, but there's a lot more you can do. So let's actually filter cases instead by criteria. So what we want is we actually want to look at everyone who is Caucasian. And right here, we have a potential for some themes coming out of our data, and that is that 9 of 12 of our superheroes in our sample data are actually Caucasian. So that, of course, brings up all sorts of themes you can start in exploring and analyzing about comic books. But also remember that all of these superheroes were actually created many decades ago. So that's something to keep in mind. So you can filter cases by criteria, but it's not just whether a code is applied or not. It can also be, let's do gender is female, and will be, and we're going to do gender is, sorry, not gender, we are going to do universe is DC. And now we see right away that Catwoman and Wonder Woman are the two superheroes from the DC universe we have in our study. So let's actually go ahead and do a criteria again, which is again female. And the other code is Marvel. Let's see how Marvel stacks up. And Marvel actually has 3, which may or may not be interesting information for us, but that's an example of one way you can use the filters to reduce the, or actually to look at a subset of your cases. Okay, so let me go back to the PowerPoint before I get too far off track. We've worked with, talked about the report builder. I showed it a bit. Basically, you apply filters in the study window to select the cases and codes that you want to include. You open the report builder from the tools menu. You select reference elements to include. Let me go back to that so you know what I mean. In the report builder, we could, for instance, if we're only interested in the codes, we don't need the coded source text. But if we had annotations, we would want to include the annotations. We can also include a study overview, which creates information at the head of the report on a separate page if you're displaying on multiple pages, or at the top of the report if you display on all. And as you're doing case filtering criteria, then you might want to have that include that information. So example, this would be a list of filtered codes is on Phoenix, Storm, and the Invisible Woman, and the criteria used is by criteria gender female, and universe is Marvel. So that's a visual of what I'm talking about when I say you should select the reference elements to include. You can sort by case name or by code. And you can select study overview elements to include, select the display options of multiple pages, etc. And then you can export or display the report. I have been displaying it, which creates a report here, but you can also export the report to a text file. So frequency reports. Just like with the report builder, you apply filters in the study window to select the cases and codes that you want to include. You open the frequency report. You select statistics to include, select codes and cases, whether that's all codes or only filtered codes and cases, and you print or export the frequency report. So quick demonstration of that. I open the frequency report, and right now it's on only filtered cases and codes. So we have 3, and I can choose whether I want this information or not. If I'm just interested in a quick visual check, because we have male filtered out and female filtered in, we have only 3, gender, female, etc. And of course, everyone had answered the same thing, so that's why that shows the same numbers down there. So minimum, maximum, mean, standard deviation. So that's the frequency report for that. sorry, I wanted to show you one more thing with that. We can instead do all codes and all cases, and then we see that 5 are female and 7 are male, and we have 2 nemesis coded already. 5 are in DC universe and 7 are in the Marvel universe. So this is what here. And then you can print it. And it shows like that. If you need to, you can change it to landscape so that you see the whole code name here. Or you can export it again to a text file. Actually, you can export a matrix as well. And this is a way to get data back out, quantitative data back out of your study for use in Excel or SPSS or SAS or other quantitative tools. And so you tell whether you want it. Let's go ahead and delimit it with a tab, and I'm going to export that. We're actually at the superhero study, so I'm going to export the data into the superhero study folder, and then I'm actually going to open it in Excel. We can close the downturn study. So, and I know my desktop is getting pretty crowded here. One of those people who has a crowded screen all the time. So exported data, we want to, it's delimited, and specifically it's delimited with tab, so we can see here. And I don't really, it's general is fine. I don't need to do anything here, so I go ahead and finish. And there we have the Phoenix Storm and the Invisible Woman exported data from the frequency report. Okay, so let's see, back to the PowerPoint. The theory builder is something that we actually cover in our iterative theory building and qualitative research webinar that is repeated every month. So I'm just going to give you an overview here without a demonstration. You can actually see the webinar replays for our advanced webinar that includes the theory builder. So like frequency reports and the report builder, you first apply any filters in the study window to select the cases you want to test. And then you can create a new theory. You add rules. Or you open a theory setting, and then you can export or display the theory report. I'm not going to demonstrate how to do that. I am just going to demonstrate actually, I'm just going to demonstrate what it looks like so you'll recognize it when you do it. And I'm going to the Cinderella study tutorial, and I'm going to open the Cinderella study. Let me hide others again. And I'm going to open saved theory settings. And that opens the theory builder with a Cinderella hypothesis that goes with the Cinderella study. This actually is the study that's used in our tutorial, PDF tutorial for learning how to use the theory builder with the Cinderella study. And here we have the actual theory, and here it shows each of the rules. And when we display it, we have basically it runs the rules against the data in your study, and it tells you where the coding supports the rules you set up within the study. So this is, again, an advanced feature of HyperRESEARCH that does some quantitative manipulations on your data to determine whether your coding supports the hypothesis or the theory that you have in mind. Okay, so back to PowerPoint. Other helpful tools and features include search text sources, autocode, the word counter, the code map, and we have several tools in development, such as advanced filters, coverage map, intercoder reliability, and the study organizer. If you are interested in any of the tools that are in development, we do have a beta tester program that you can sign up for, and if you're chosen, we will send you the tools that we need tested. I'm afraid we're pretty much out of time, and so I'm going to be wrapping up. I'm actually going to be, we're working on video tutorials on all of these things, and we will be releasing these tools. The neat thing about tools in HyperRESEARCH is that we can release a tool separately, and you can download it and install it into the current version of HyperRESEARCH without us having to release a whole new version of the software. So look for that in the future. And now I will open the floor for questions. You can type them in the chat window. And if you have any additional questions that aren't answered here, or that you want some one-on-one interaction with our tech support, which includes myself and our two developers, Paul, who is the HyperRESEARCH developer, and Jean, who is the HyperTranscribe developer. So when you are contacting customer support, you are contacting people who have been with the company for decades and really know the stuff inside and out. So with that, I will open the floor for questions.